Hello, and thank you for joining our first Friday in July. It is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, David Chinery. David is a senior resource educator at Cornell Cooperative Extension of Rensselaer County, and his work focuses on horticulture and turf management. Even though we're celebrating the 4th of July, fall will be here before we know it. So David is here to help us grow green lawns with fall overseeding. Thank you, David.
All right. Well, thank you, Matt. It's great to be here. I like talking about overseeding. It's something we've been working on for a number of years. And it's a good idea to get ready to do some of your lawn work this time of the year because, as Matt said, fall is going to be fast approaching and we're going to be in that magical time of the year, which is August and September, when it's a great time to work on your lawn. So I'd first like to start out talking a little bit about why lawns don't do well over the summer. And we've had a lot of rain this spring, but now the past couple of weeks we've had a heat wave and we've had a lot of dry conditions. So lawns are really taking it on the chin. And maybe we have too much water, too little water. Maybe some of our soils are low fertility or our fertilizer hasn't worked too well. Maybe we have insect problems, diseases, and weeds. So by this time and even later into the summer, lawns really start to look poorly. And these cool season grasses that we grow don't really grow that well in the heat of summer. And that's why the August and September time period is such a great time to do things like overseeding, which we're going to talk about today. Now, ideally, in the ideal world where we would live in a castle on a grassy knoll, we would like to have better lawns that use less chemicals or fewer herbicides, certainly, or maybe no herbicides. And we'd like to have fewer weeds. We'd also like to have these lawns be dense and thick and cover the ground because that reduces soil exposure and things like erosion. So a dense lawn is really an environmental asset. And the way we work with IPM using multiple strategies, this overseeding fits into this strategy of not maybe using as many herbicides in the future. So repetitive overseeding is this idea that we came up with a number of years ago. Started out at Iowa State by Dr. David Minner. It was developed by Dr. Frank Rossi at Cornell University. And first off, they were looking at sports fields, making sports fields thicker and denser so when athletes fell down, they wouldn't get hurt. And that's where this really started out. And the idea of overseeding basically is just going out and putting down more grass seed on the surface of a lawn or a sports field to make it thicker and denser. We're not going to turn up the soil. We're not going to do a lot of aeration. We're just going to put down seed and try to get it to germinate and fill in and make this lawn or sports field denser. So that's where our idea comes from. And way back in 2003, we did a project here in Rensselaer County at a place called Averill Park High School, where we went out and we did overseeding in strips. And you can see my old picture here. These are strips of seed that we put down for several weeks, starting in the late August in through September and really ending in the beginning of October. And our idea was the athletes were coming and they were practicing football on this area. And we wanted to see if we could make this lawn denser so that they would have better footing and they would have a softer surface to land on when they fell down. So we made these strips. We went out and put the seed down. It was a rainy sort of a fall that year, and we had great success. And I thought, hey, yeah, we can grow grass seed on the sports field even when the kids are playing on it. But little did I know when I went back to look at it the next year, this was taken about the beginning of July, probably, or maybe sometime in June, that we could still see these strips of this ryegrass that we had overseeded. And it occurred to me that all this light green grass in this picture was crabgrass, and the dark green grass was the ryegrass that we had put down. And what we were doing was crowding out the crabgrass the next year. So we thought, hey, could this be used on home lawns? And could this reduce the need for herbicide on places like home lawns? If we can crowd out this crabgrass by overseeding, maybe we can use this as an IPM technique, and maybe we can use less herbicide in the future. So that's where this whole thing comes from, is this little discovery we made way back in 2004. So yes, we found out that this does work. We can use overseeding to make lawns denser by filling in the bare spots, and we can reduce annual weeds like crabgrass. Now, it doesn't really work so well on things like ground ivy, these perennial weeds, but we can certainly fill in these bare spots and reduce the need for pre-emergent herbicide for crabgrass. So we're going to talk a little bit about how that works. Okay, now what kind of species would we use for this? Now my slide's a little messed up here, but basically tall fescue works pretty well, and perennial ryegrass works very well for overseeding. We've also used fescues. The one type of grass that doesn't work so good because it takes so long to germinate is Kentucky bluegrass. So how does crabgrass work? That's really the trick here, is that crabgrass is an annual, meaning that it dies in the fall, uh, doesn't isn't present over the winter. In the spring, it has to start out from seed and regrow. And we're going to take advantage of this life cycle through this overseeding, because the crabgrass is going to have to start out and regrow. Now, it does that very vigorously, but we're going to try to put our seed down and fill in with new grass as this crabgrass is dying out in the fall. Now there's two species of crabgrass that we have. We're not going to worry about that too much because they pretty much basically function the same way. But there's a picture of crabgrass in its glory on a gravel surface. Now, how does crabgrass grow? What's the life cycle? Well, in the spring, when the forsythia starts to bloom, the soils warm up, and when they get to be about 55 degrees soil temperature, for a few days, the crabgrass is going to germinate. And people say, oh, we like forsythia. Uh, that's an indicator plant in my mind, because that's telling us it's about time to put on our pre-emergent herbicide. Now, crabgrass can continue to germinate, and it may germinate from early spring into the summer, depending on your conditions. So you can really build up a big population of crabgrass, and that's why people have used this pre-emergent herbicide. Now, I'm not promoting any brand here, just giving you an example of that. But thousands of acres of lawns are treated with this pre-emergent herbicide each year in New York State. So if we can reduce that amount of herbicide that we're using, hey, we're doing something probably that's good for the environment, right? And sometimes people use two applications of pre-emergent herbicide. And again, they time this when that forsythia starts to fade out, and that's the time to put on your first treatment of this. So what does crabgrass look like? Well, here's a picture I took in the beginning of May, and it's starting to germinate and coming up there. Obviously, I haven't used any pre-emergent herbicide because in this thin bare spot in my lawn, it's really doing pretty well. By early June, you can see it's starting to develop more leaves. It's getting a little bit more vigorous. And if I have these open spots on my lawn, this is where this is going to be happening. And again, we don't like open spots and lawns from an environmental standpoint, because really we are exposing the soil to erosion and nutrient loss. And it's much better to have this dense cover of lawn than these open bare spots. So here we are in midsummer, and the crabgrass is cooking along. And in this picture, you can see the crabgrass is this light green grass that's filling in. The darker green grass is my more desirable cool season grass. And it's really starting to look pretty thick and dense. And here it is in late summer, really filling in and taking over. And I just wanted to show you some pictures of how big it can get, right? We can have these big, giant crabgrass plants with lots of tillers or branches, and then we get these finger-like seed heads on it. And it can really be very, very big. And that's an annual plant that's taken that summer to create that big form. One crabgrass plant can make 150,000 seeds. That's kind of a nightmare there because they're very prolific. And crabgrass can make seeds if we mow low. If we mow higher, we tend to have less crabgrass. So mowing at 4 inches down to 3 inches is a little bit better practice, but you can still have crabgrass. And this is what it looks like in the fall on a sports field. Okay, we've had a frost here and the crabgrass is dying out, and it's going to leave all these areas bare for the winter. And then we have our crabgrass skeletons that are just there over the winter and the early spring. And here again is some examples of strips that we made at another test site of this overseeding. And you can see those brown spots are this crabgrass that have died out. This is late fall, this picture was taken. And we've put this new grass there, and that new grass will persist into the following year. So here's my case study. Okay, this was at a park in Lansingburg, New York, which is a suburb of Troy. And this is a 9/11 memorial, which had been put there, a very lovely spot next to the Hudson River. It was planted with a grass sod. Initially, the sod had died from grubs and from neglect. And all that brown area there you can see is crabgrass that's filling in. Okay, there's some green clover there, and this was taken in early spring. So what we're going to do here is we're going to come in the late summer, and we're going to put a couple strips of overseeded area in, and then we're going to show you how that progresses over the season. So the brown is the crabgrass. It's early spring. It hasn't germinated yet, and then the overseeding is going to take place. And here I am out sweating with my shorts on, and I'm going to be putting down my grass seed in my little drop spreader. I'm going to start in mid-August. I'm going to put it down at 2 to 3 week intervals, and I'm going to continue into the beginning of October. And my point with all of this is an easy process to do. If you're a home lawn owner, this is not hard stuff to do. You get a spreader, you go out and you spread some seed. And you can do this by hand, even if you don't have a spreader. I've had many people over the years tell me that, hey, I tried that overseeding on my lawn and it really worked pretty well. So here's my little drop spreader. I'm not going to aerate the lawn. I'm not going to slit seed the lawn. I'm not going to rake the lawn. I'm just going to put grass seed in this little spreader. I'm going to turn my handle. I'm going to walk up and down, and I'm going to put down my grass seed at a rate of about 3 pounds per thousand. That's a general rule, and you can bend that rule all you like, but that's kind of a ballpark. So now what happened that year that we did this? Okay. August was very dry. We had less than normal rainfall. September was very dry. We had less than normal rainfall. And October was very dry. Now, it's no great secret that seeds don't germinate as well when it's dry out. If you have a rainy fall, these seeds are going to grow like gangbusters. If you have a dry fall, it's going to be a little harder to achieve. And since I was doing this project, I wanted it to work. So I went out and did this 6 times. Now, normally that would be way too much. I would say try to do it 3 times maybe in a normal, kind of semi-rainy or rainy fall. But you can put down more seed. Nobody's going to say that you can't do that. It's going to cost you a little bit more money. So what happened? Okay, here's our results by the third week of October. Okay, this is getting to the point where the crabgrass has died and become brown because the frost has come. You can see my 2 test strips here. All right, I've got sidewalk, and then right next to the sidewalk, there's that brown strip where we didn't overseed, but that's the crabgrass that's dead. Then next to that, I have my perennial ryegrass that's come in. It looks lush, it looks beautiful. All I've done there is run that spreader up and down, drop that seed on the ground. I haven't watered it, and it's just been Mother Nature taking over, and really the grass seed fills in. Next to that, I have a plant called tall fescue, which is another great lawn grass. Makes a deeper root system, a little bit more drought tolerant, and that has come in very well as well. And before that and around, or in front of that and around that, you can see my dead crabgrass. So my overseeding was a success, and you can see the leaves are coming down. It's fall time, and these strips are going to be there next spring and start out my lawn in the following year in a much denser and thicker manner. Okay, and there's just another picture of the memorial, and you can think back to that first picture I showed you, which was kind of all that brown dead crabgrass in the spring. And here we have this nice sort of V-shaped plot that's doing very well. So overseeding is very simple, and I think it's a great process for a home lawn owner. Sports field people have adopted it, and we get lots of people that say, hey, I tried that, and it's made a difference on my lawn. So another look, our tall fescue plot had 85% more new seedlings covering it, and our perennial ryegrass plot had about 95% more seedlings cover it. So we thought that was pretty successful. So just a little wrap up here before I show you just a couple more slides. You can use perennial ryegrass, you can use tall fescue. I wouldn't use Kentucky 31 tall fescue seed. That's not one of our improved varieties. It's widely sold, but it's not a particularly attractive grass. But there's lots of turf type tall fescues that you can find being sold out there, maybe in a store or maybe on the internet somewhere. You might want to start out doing this in late August and going into early October. About 3 pounds per 1,000 square feet. Now you're going to have to calibrate your spreader. So I'm going to give you that as homework. And you might do it 3 times. You might do it a couple more times depending on your weather, a little bit more if it's really dry out. We didn't talk about fertilizer. A little starter fertilizer that might help. We did some starter fertilizer on some of that plot. It made a little bit of a difference. If your soil hasn't been fertilized and maybe is low fertility, starter fertilizer might be a good idea. Just mow it. You don't have to not mow the area. If you're just doing one patch, you can keep mowing that patch. You don't really have to stay off of it, and you don't really need to aerate or do any kind of fancy cultivation. Okay, we have a YouTube channel called Cornell Cooperative Extension of Rensselaer County, and we have a little video on there if you'd like to check that out. And just two examples as I close out this session. Here's two more. I had a friend named Gail. She had a swimming pool, but she had a crummy crabgrass lawn. I said, Gail, I want to make a little plot here and show pictures of it. So here's Gail's crabgrass lawn next to her pool, and we overseeded it. This is in August when our crabgrass is doing really well, but again, our crabgrass is going to die out as the season winds down. And here's early November, and there's Gail's pool put to bed for the winter. And we have this beautiful strip of this ryegrass that we planted, and all her crabgrass is dead, but that will be there to persist in the next year. And she lives near a lake, and it's really important to have turf grass cover next to a lake because we don't want erosion and runoff into that lake. So here's her lawn next to the lake, full of crabgrass and sort of a rocky soil, sandy soil. And there's all her crabgrass, and there was the strip that we made. Now, if you're doing this at home, you're not going to be making strips. You're going to be doing maybe a big patch of your lawn. So don't think you have to be crazy like David and make these as stripes. So hopefully that'll benefit some of you that are interested in lawns as we go into the later part of the summer and into the fall. And good luck with your overseeding. It's a great IPM technique, and maybe we can reduce some of our fertilizer, or I should say our herbicide use in New York State. So thank you.
Well, thank you, David. That was really interesting and informative. Really exciting to see how that treatment transfers a lawn or a patch of lawn. So I feel like your message is really going to empower people to go out and do this on their own. So thank you so much for sharing your message with us today. Um, at this time, I'll invite our IPM Minute speaker to bring up his slides. With our IPM Minute, we take a quick look at a timely topic and provide some action items you can take. And so for this segment, I'd like to introduce Brian Eshenaur. Brian is an associate director at Cornell IPM and the invasive species IPM coordinator. Brian's work emphasizes the detection and management of invasive species to protect New York's agricultural, landscape, and natural environments. So today we've asked Brian to share some insights about beech leaf disease. Thank you, Brian.
All right, thank you, Matt. Yeah, so we're looking at a new invasive disease here, beech leaf disease, and we're going to go through in a really short period of time here the cause, symptoms, the spread, and management of this disease that affects the Native American beech, as well as those ornamental beeches that are European and Asian. So let's get started and talk about the cause, which is really interesting for this disease. In fact, for a while, we saw the symptoms of this brand new disease. It was noticed on the shores of Lake Erie in Ohio, but we had no idea what was causing it. It was about 5 years when different pathogens were looked at, bacteria, viruses, some of the normal causes like fungi were looked for, but they couldn't find them. And it wasn't until about 2017, and then the story was written about it in the Washington Post when they finally figured out that it was caused by this nematode. So a microscopic worm is actually up in the foliage between the upper and lower leaf tissue there. And we think of nematodes normally in our natural world living in the soil and feeding on organic matter, although some of them will be pathogenic to roots. There are some that feed on foliage, and this is one of the rare ones that will actually feed on a tree. And the U.S. Department of Agriculture got involved to describe this, and they showed this scanning electron microscopic view of um, beech leaf disease nematode there. Lydianthus crenata McCaini is its name, and it's new to science. So there's some relatives of this in other parts of the world, but this is a new nematode that we're just learning about. And here you can see a cross section of leaves here. The one on the left is healthy, and the one on the right is diseased. And the colorized blue area there is the nematodes that are in there, again, between that upper and lower leaf surface. So that was a close-up that we're not going to see without a microscope, but what are the symptoms out there in nature? Let's take a look at those. Well, at this time of year, and I got this sample earlier this week, so here in July, we don't see a whole lot. Maybe you can see a little bit here, but even at this time of year, if the lighting is just right and you're looking up through the canopy, like we are in this shot, you can see a little more of those symptoms there. The darker colors are representing areas where there's a concentration of nematodes, and often it appears as striping. So later in the season, the symptoms develop. Marjorie Daughtry with Cornell University on Long Island has done a lot of work with this disease, following it along after it arrived in New York. And she took these shots uh, of the same tree in May, where we can just barely see some symptoms, and in November, when it's pretty clear that you have these channels here between the leaf veins where there's a high concentration of nematodes. And the nematodes have a difficult time because of their size, making it over those leaf veins. So they tend to be in sections there on the leaves. This one I took in September. So, in the fall, you can start to really see those symptoms. And it also causes leaf curling, and the leaves eventually die. And this is a shot where beech leaf disease has been in a forest for about 3 or 4 years. The canopy is thinning, the lower branches have died, and you can see some of the leaves that were there earlier in the spring just clinging on to that tree. Unfortunately, after several years, it can kill beech trees, and that's both landscape trees and trees in our forest. We'll talk about management in a little bit. And I want to talk about spread. So we did mention that it was initially detected right here in Ohio, and by 2019, it was affecting Canada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Western New York. And in the last survey in 2024, you can see it spread through much of New England and the whole way south to Virginia. Unfortunately, we anticipate that it probably will spread through the whole range of where American beech is native along the eastern seaboard, and probably towards the west where the American beech has been planted, and we also have European beech as an ornamental, and the Asian beech is as an ornamental as well. So let's talk about management. And here's where I'd like to point us to the beech leaf disease webpage that we have up at Cornell Integrated Pest Management. And You can find the link to this in the video description. And this is a new web page that we just put up, and it does indicate information and provide some details on what I have for bullet points here. So first, for managing, we want to focus on improving the cultural practices that raise up our trees' vigor. So mulching, 2 to 3 inches around the base of the tree, especially if there's a lot of foot traffic or other compaction there. The mulch will help with that. It also helps conserve moisture and reduces weeds. And then, yeah, if there's dry periods, we want to water to reduce drought stress on trees. You notice I don't have fertilization in there. We don't recommend fertilizing, particularly the nitrogen can encourage new foliage, which can create a more dense canopy. And that's what we want to avoid. And pruning can help light penetration and air circulation to dry out the foliage, because nematodes require a film of moisture on them to move from the leaves to the buds. As they do, they overwinter in the buds. So pruning, particularly trees that are nearby that might be shading a beech tree, could be helpful. In addition, on our website, we have treatment options. These are new options, and some are particularly effective. If it's a home beech tree you're working with, you'll probably want to work with a certified arborist who has the ability to use these products. But some of these are brand new. They've received special exemptions to be able to be used for controlling beech leaf disease. And that wraps up the beech leaf disease segment. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. It's of course unfortunate to hear that we have a new invasive species that's affecting our beech trees, but I certainly appreciate the management options that you've provided to help address those issues. So thank you, David and Brian, for your great presentations today. We really appreciate the information, and we think that you've encouraged people to adopt IPM after our presentations. Just going to share real quickly our one question survey for folks watching the video. You can scan this QR code or also check the link in the video description, and you can answer the question of, I will use what I learned today to practice IPM this weekend, this month, this year, never, or undecided. So thank you again for your time, and we hope you have a great weekend. Take care.